Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter, and I just realized that we missed one of the best stories in Soul Sacrifice Delta, which is all the stories of the Bazaar Ledger, which is Carnatux and his really funky gang of people. It's really good storytelling, lots to read, lots to listen to, not so much fighting, so this will actually probably work as a really good sort of audio one as well if you don't have the ability to watch this video. But I want to go through it. I actually went through it the other day, and I realized that I can't re-see the cutscenes of them talking to me, so I actually reverted my save data back by like 2 days, so I can record it and show it to you guys, because this is definitely one of people's really favorite stories. Like, you might wonder why Carnatux is so popular. I mean, we covered him early in the playthrough, and he's fun and he's interesting. You know, it's hard to write a character who's obnoxious and swindles you, but is still actually a good character at heart. But this story will definitely sell him, and I think he will find a place in your heart. But Carnatux Emergent, what you do is when you go in here, he says, "Oh, you want to work here? Well, there's going to be a temporary debt for that." So I'm going to go ahead and show you what this one says, and then we'll continue onward. So he says, "Hey, you, pay up. We charge an admission fee here. Well, if you can't pay with money, I'll take the sweat off your brow instead." Then you go ahead and you defeat the gargoyle. And he says, "Well done, keep it up. I should mention now that I'll only clear your debt when the mood takes me." He's so funny. And we're going to jump up into Debt Pacts 2. What I'm going to do for this video to keep it interesting is I am going to talk to the characters a few times so that you can hear their dialogue when I defeat the monsters, which will only take a few seconds. So let's go ahead and talk to Carnatux.
"I've got something good to sell you. A magic lamp. It's got a genie inside that'll do whatever you command." "What? You want a demonstration?" "Get out of here! You're bad for business." "I'd claw onto every last penny, even if the end of the world were upon us." "What's that? What use would money be then?" "Don't be stupid. I'm going to be rich in the afterlife as well. I'll be the richest man in heaven." "Hey, don't think you'll get off scot-free if you steal anything from my shop. I'll bleed you for every last penny you have." "Oh, you reckon that people who need to steal wouldn't have any money in the first place? I think you've got the nous to sniff out a profit."
Okay, so that is his dialogue for this point in the game. Let's go ahead and do Pact 2.
"Hey, you! You haven't paid off your interest yet." "Didn't I tell you? It's 500% interest per day." "Well, if you can't pay the interest, I'll just work you 5 times as hard instead."
Nice. So he's making me work to pay off this debt for apparently entering the shop had an entrance fee. I just love how the main protagonist puts up with this, and he's just like so innocent. He's just like, "What is wrong with this guy? I didn't want to work for be in the shop. Why is he doing this?" So let's go ahead and fight the harpy. I love these loading messages. "My debt quintuples in 1 day. Are they mad? In 3 days, I'll owe 100 times more. And you can't work in my shop." Carnatux issues an ultimatum. When did he start to think I wanted to work for him?
"They say money isn't everything. Well, they're wrong."
Bazaar customs are locked in about the bazaar. I think I'm going to read these as we unlock them, because I do find them interesting.
"All right, that'll do. You can consider yourself a temporary staff member now. You weren't applying for a job, you say? News to me." Details, details. You're the perfect wage slave." "You had better learn the ropes."
Thanks, Carnatux. I'm so happy that I'm an unofficial employee here. So let's go to lore. And we go to about the Bazaar. The customs. Carnatux's Bazaar is said to lie somewhere in the slums of Romulus. He operates in secret, away from the prying eyes of Avalon, dealing in things both material, such as money, goods, and treasures, and things immaterial, such as information and rumors. The cardinal rule at the Bazaar is customers are fruit ripe for the picking. This is the story of one of the customers fleeced by Carnatux. There once was a lad of Romulus who paid a visit to Carnatux's Bazaar. He opened the door, entered, and then stated his business to the gilded sorcerer who owned the place. "Listen here, you little whelp. Do I look like a doctor to you?" The lad had begged the shopkeeper to cure his mother's sickness. It wasn't that he took the gaudily adorned man for a doctor, rather he had nowhere else to turn. The gilded shopkeeper, who introduced himself as Carnatux, shooed the lad away as if he was some stray dog. But before he left, Carnatux asked, "Where are you from?" The lad said he was born in the slums a short distance from there. Hearing this, Carnatux's expression completely changed. "Get out of here, you pauper, and don't come back!" He seemed quite furious. The lad was downcast at being driven out of the store. He cut through an alley by the store and sat down on the side of the street. The lad was no fool. He knew it was doctors that tended to the sick, but what else could he do when he had no money to his name? He had heard the rumor about the gilded man, the rumor that the golden sorcerer was a friend to the poor. He had placed his last hope upon mere hearsay. The lad just sat there by the roadside, his mind in a fog. That night, a man accompanied by several guardsmen was seen entering the shop. The man remained inside while the guards came out and proceeded to talk amongst themselves. The lad strained his ears, trying to pick up on what they were saying. It seemed the man they were dealing with was of considerable means. Carnatux's shop is where people went when they needed to make deals that could not be made anywhere else, and such deals were not limited to the goods that lined its shelves. It dealt in practically anything one could desire. In fact, the shop's motto was, "We have what you want, if you have the money." And Carnatux was prepared to do anything, be it thievery or extortion, to bring his customers what they desired. But the price Carnatux levied was often as great as it was arbitrary. At times, he might even demand customers give them their entire fortune, or that which they hold most dear. And yet still they willingly paid for his unconscionable prices, for he always delivered what they wanted. Carnatux's booming laugh could be heard, even outside the city streets. "Ha ha ha! This is perfect. Been waiting for a customer like you." It seemed that another one of his black market deals had been made. Carnatux's Bazaar, caterer to the rich. That booming laugh crushed any hopes the lad had left. So he rose to his feet and trudged on home, a despondent and broken soul. So it was the lad returned home. Several days passed. Then one day he received some unexpected visitors. It was the man of means and his guardsman, who the lad had seen at Carnatux's shop. Upon seeing how sick the lad's mother was, the man placed a vial of medicine before him. As the man turned to leave, the lad stopped him and asked a reason for his kindness. The man began to grumble about some unscrupulous sorcerer forcing his hand. It seems that on top of paying a pricely sum for what he wanted, the man had also been told to tend to every last alien slum dweller. It turned out that he was more than a man of considerable means. He was also a doctor who served the nobility. The lad thought back to the day he visited Carnatux's Bazaar, recalling that the sorcerer had said, "This is perfect," after the man had gone inside. Perhaps that was Carnatux remembering the lad upon discovering he had a rich doctor in his shop. It was then that the lad recalled how Carnatux had asked him where he was from. Carnatux's Bazaar, caterer to the rich. That much was true, and yet he was also a friend to the poor. The lad finally felt that he understood the gilded sorcerer's anger at his intrusion in the bazaar. The moment he became a customer, Carnatux thought of him as nothing more than someone to be fleeced. It was just as Carnatux thought of the wealthy doctor. After all, the cardinal rule at the bazaar is customers are fruit ripe for the picking. It would therefore follow that paupers would be turned away. Stories abounded about the unfortunates who Carnatux had helped. Several had even reached the ears of high-ranking members of Sanctuarium, a group dedicated to salvation. It is said that Carnatux's desire to help the poor deeply impressed Sanctuarium. They even sent an envoy to his bazaar, seeking his entry into the group. "Join Sanctuarium? How much are you willing to pay?" His response was no surprise to those who knew him. But to the envoy, it left them in stunned silence, whereupon Carnatux spewed his usual, "Get out, you pauper!" And so, like many who had visited the bazaar before him, the envoy of Sanctuarium left empty-handed. I like him. He's great. So he helped the lad out and his mother, so he's a good guy. But he definitely enjoys taking advantage of the rich. But somehow he gets what they want. So let's go ahead and go on to the next debt pack.
Alright, time to stock up. My dear little sister will be helping you today.
I am Carnatux's sister, Vidiara.
Hello, Vidiara.
You've a peculiar name. Wage slave, wasn't it?
Hey now.
I don't remember Carnatux saying anything about paying you any wages, though.
Man, they're all the same. First, I could not believe my ears. Carnatux has a sister. Then I could not believe my eyes. Nothing about them was alike, except the right arm. One more thing. You'll owe me a fee for the help. Such important information. I wish she had mentioned it earlier. She's just another swindler, just like her brother.
I would gladly die for my brother.
I don't know if it's just me, but she's got like almost like Bayonetta vibes going on. I love how fate sometimes will like randomly upgrade the rarity of the item that you get, and sometimes you don't want it to happen because you're like going for life essence and you're like, yes, I got it, and then it goes and makes it a plus version. You're like, no. Okay, so we can now use her as an NPC. We can even get her to S rank and get her outfit as well, which is nice.
Now that we've finished, I'll have my compensation for assisting you. What's that look for? It's only fair. Wouldn't you agree? Don't get any ideas just because Carnatux likes you. I'll be watching you to see what you're really like. I am Carnatux's right eye, after all.
Okay, on to Debt Pacts, Chapter 4.
Hey, you! Vidiara will be helping you today.
So when can I expect to have my fee for the last time I helped you? It won't do to keep a lady waiting. I'm gonna bleed you dry, you know. I'll see to it that you never crawl out of the debt you've got yourself into. I can see it. That arm of yours will bring about a terrible calamity one day.
Going up against a centaur. I love my brother. It's your funeral, I longed to answer. How could anyone like that thieving fraud? What kind of past do these two share? You want to take my brother for yourself, don't you? The gads. Never was a thought further from my mind. What, as they say, would be in it for me? He's so flabbergasted by their accusations and assumptions. It's innocent and cute.
Odie, add in the cost of me helping you, I'd say you've got 10 times the debt. Maybe I should make you my own slave now. Cheer up. You'd like that, wouldn't you? Now, don't hold this against me, but I want you to stay away from Carnatux. There's something very wrong about the colour of your soul.
You know, I think Vidiara likes you. She's offered to help you again today.
Oh, is that where you were? I didn't notice. Actually, my eye doesn't seem to be itself lately. I know. Why don't you be my eye today? Do as you're told, and I might even reconsider your staggering debts. Well, I'll think about it anyway.
Okay, so she wants us to take down the Pegasus for her, so be it. Vidiara was on treacherous ground. Apparently it was true, what she said about her poor vision. It happens occasionally, she confessed. I stretched out a helping hand as she tottered. What do you want in return? I only lent a hand. I'm not looking for a reward.
Don't you worry about me. I'm not completely blind. Though my physical sight might fail me. My mind's eye is special. And the most important things you can't usually see. I am very grateful for your concern. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to Debt Pact 6. I think this might be the final one with her. Then we can read her story.
Did something happen between you and Vidiara? She seems to be really stuck on you, you know.
My eye doesn't really belong to me. My brother shared his sight with me. Ever since then, the way I've seen the world has been different to the way people usually see it. You know, your soul has a more complex colour than most. I might have misjudged you, somewhat. You'll have to show me more. Show me your soul's true colours.
Sounds kinky. Let's go and beat up the three little pigs. Vidiara confessed something. That she had felt uneasy, fearful since she first saw it. I've never seen a soul of such colors. I had helped Vidiara once before. At that time, she said she saw the color of my soul. It changed her opinion of me a little.
I should apologize. I looked too closely and accidentally glimpsed into your past. I saw someone important to you dwelling in your right arm. I felt how strongly your sin weighs upon you, so much so that my own heart ached just from peeking into yours. It was a fragile, fleeting memory, so delicate that the lightest touch would shatter it. It's not something that others should steal a glance at. I know what kind of person you are now. Very well. I hereby welcome you. You are a member of the family now, and you can therefore consider me your sister.
What's up, sis?
That said, you still owe us.
Okay, let's go and read about Vidiara's story. It's a nice one. About the Bazaar, Vidiara's past. Ironside is an unusual druid village. For generations, it has produced many masters of healing magic, the reason being the training that the young sorcerers receive and the unique local geography. A great forest sprawls near the village, where natural ingredients essential in healing magic can be collected. According to records, a great plague once swept through the area and claimed many victims. Most of the dead were buried in the forest. The plague was a terrible tragedy, but it also led to the people's familiarization with healing magic. Vidiara, the sorcerer, was born in Ironside. Like other villagers before her, she was an accomplished student and soon mastered magical arts. The sick, the injured, and the dying were drawn to Ironside in the hopes of being cured. It's a well-known but rarely voiced rule that only fellow druids were treated. The Romulus were turned away. Normally the Romulus held sway over the druids, and the defiance of the village was an unusual case. The reason for the rule? The villagers believed that the plague of the past was caused when the Romulus and druids first interacted. That which should not come together came together, and thus sickness was inflicted upon the village that not even magic could heal. Despite this warning, it did not feel right to Vidiara to treat some but not others. A patient is a patient, no matter what their race or tribe. What she did next, it could be said, was an act of both mercy and youthful folly. She began treating the Romulus, but it was not long before the other villagers found out and exiled her from the village. Still, she had no regrets. After that, Vidiara resolved never to go against her true feelings. She promised to always do what she knew in her heart was right. Vidiara began to travel, visiting the poor and sick, providing cures, earning a name for herself. A back alley healer, willing to treat anyone, including those who were refused by real physicians. But as her fame grew, she became troubled. She realized that there was something lacking in her healing methods. Even after she treated them, many of her patients would turn into monsters. She was able to cure surface wounds, but the true root of sickness was beyond her powers. She could not change the circumstances of their lives. Her patients lived in desperate conditions, spurned by real physicians, and that meant that they were always threatened by disease. It pained Vidiara to see her patients turn into monsters. Those same monsters would injure others, and they would become monsters in turn. She could see the cycle well enough, but not the solution. One day, a family was attacked by a monster, and only a single child survived. The child was blinded in the attack. The monster that committed the act was a former patient of Vidiara's. Vidiara felt responsible, and so she gave up one of her eyes to the child, allowing the boy to see once more. But that did not mean his life was filled with light again. A little while later, Vidiara began to hear worrying stories. The boy had turned bad, people whispered. He was making a living as a thief. A sudden realization came unbidden to Vidiara. She had wanted to find a treatment that could bring some joy, however small, to the world's outcasts. But it seems that her unhappy fates that were sealed from the very beginning. Some people were beyond her help, no matter what she did. And so she had to choose her patients. Like the healers back in her village, she must try to help only those people who could be helped. Her ideals had been naive and foolish. The world itself was ill, she realized, but she could not cure the world. No one could. And if Vidiara could not treat it, she could not bear to see it. So in a terrible act of despair, Vidiara plucked out her remaining eye. With that, she turned into a blind monster. Immediately, an order was issued for her death. The sentence was carried out by a certain sorcerer. The one who was truly sick was you. So said the sorcerer as he performed the act of salvation. Not only did he save her, he gave the blind, ignorant woman one of his own eyes. That sorcerer was Carnatux. He spoke to Vidiara and said, "I give you this eye so that you might see and understand." Though her vision was not completely healed, she did begin to see. The boy she had saved was not just a common cut purse. He was a thief of honor, stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. Carnatux had become the boy's protector and taught him how to rob the rich. So when the boy needed help, he knew to whom to turn. "Save Vidiara, for I owe her my life," he had pleaded to Carnatux. "So I did, but I expect you to pay the fee, my doctor friend." "Ha ha ha," chuckled Carnatux. Sometimes people judge the world too harshly. The sickness of pessimism can cloud our vision and make us blind. Like Vidiara, who stopped believing that anyone could be saved. She never recovered her old vision, but she gained something else instead. She could see far more of the world than before. With Carnatux's eye, she saw everything that he had seen as if they were her own memories. The world he had seen contained more misery than her own ever had. He could have easily fallen into despair. Had he been like Vidiara, he would have plucked out his eyes. But a powerful conviction made him strong. Even face to face with a world of sickness, he was still able to laugh. Vidiara decided to follow him. And ever since, Vidiara and Carnatux have been like brother and sister. They are not related by blood, but in their mind, they are his family. After all, they look upon the world with the same eyes. Quite literally. It's a nice story, isn't it?
Both me and Vidiara have our hands full. My dear little brother will help you today.
Hey! What did you just say about my brother? I have a feeling you said something. Something like, he looks like a gaudy freak. If you want me to let you off the hook, you'll have to pay me compensation.
What does he think I said some beef about his brother? Why would I do that? So let's go to quickly take down the Cyclops. A ridiculous accusation. I obviously said no such thing. This younger brother is even more unscrupulous as his siblings. I didn't accuse anyone of being a greedy so-and-so, but even if I had, it would hardly be an insult. After all, if the shoe fits. And yet we agreed to help them out with the pacts. I love it.
wonder if we'll come across any dirty rumours here.
Well, he's hooked me up with so many good rumors that I will forgive. Okay, and immediately he joins as an NPC that we can play with. He's all stylish.
Did I just hear you shooting your mouth off about my brother again? Something about him having a vile grin, was it?
Something tells me he's speaking from his inner heart.
All right, then. Where's your proof you didn't say that? Thought so. I guess money's the only way to resolve this little dispute. There's no more sincere way to show your contrition.
Oh yes, the prove that it didn't happen argument. I love it. So let's continue on to chapter 8.
Hey, you! Aurex was calling for you. He says he's got a job you can help him with.
So tell me, was that rumour you told me before true? Don't play dumb. I mean that one about that monster that's worth a pretty penny. You're not saying I was mishearing things, are you? If you think I'll let you have it all to yourself, you're crazy.
This guy is smoking something. So on to the Iron Virgin. I'd not heard any rumors of monsters worth their weight. For some reason, he thought I had. I wanted to clear up the misunderstanding, so I tried to speak to Aurex, but this time he simply ignored me. They've got a mind of their own.
What? You really never said anything in the first place? Trying to deceive me, eh? Oh, you're a nasty piece of work. Rotten to the core.
I don't know if he's playing me or he's like serious.
I'll have my compensation for that. Just like when you were bad-mouthing my brother. What's that? You think I'm mishearing things? Not bloody likely. People call me the ear of Carnatux, I'll have you know. Nothing gets by me. Probably.
At least he's honest about that last part. Okay, on to chapter 9.
My brother's asking after you. Says he wants to work with you again.
Don't you stare at me with that doubtful expression on your face. Now you've got me riled up as well. Look, it's just not in my nature to listen to everything people say. That's why I tend to mishear people a lot. I was probably just mishearing you when you were bad-mouthing Carnatux or spreading silly rumours. I'm sorry. Ha! Just kidding. I'm not one for apologising. Besides, you don't have any proof, do you? You know what that means? Compensation.
The miscommunication has caused a lot of trouble. He was smiling, but pride meant that no apologies were offered. Despite the summons, Carnatux's brother does not respond. I thought he was simply ignoring me, but perhaps...
You think there's something wrong with my ears? You've got a keen eye. No wonder Carnatux likes you. Actually, my ear... it's not mine, originally. I used to be deaf, but then Carnatux gave me my hearing back. Sometimes it doesn't work too well, though, and I start mishearing things a lot. But it's thanks to this ear that I heard something I couldn't before. And the sound I heard showed me that the world isn't just full of discord.
Okay, on we go.
You're wanted again. Aurex has really taken to you.
So, suppose that those scrapes you got into for bad-mouthing Carnatux were all down to me mishearing you. Well, then it must have been quite the hardship for you. Even so, I'm not in the slightest bit inclined to apologise. After all, even if I was mishearing things, the fact that it made me angry remains. So why don't you apologise instead? Relax, I was joking.
Aurex offered this. I owe my brother my life. I cannot, nor will not, hear him spoken ill of. He deigns to respond to my talk less and less. Gestures and signs were the only recourse. Okay, we've unlocked Aurex's past in the Bazaar. And we saved Helena.
I can have hope for the world because my brother is there for me. That's the truth. That's why I can't stand people criticising him. Just chalk up my mishearing you to bad luck and forget about it. Let's just say that everything was down to your terrible luck.
Blames me in the end.
Now that wraps it up beautifully. Peace is restored. Alright? How about this instead? I'll consider you part of the family. If I mishear you, just take it in your stride. It's doubtful I will ever apologise anyway.
Okay, brother. So let's go read up about him and how he came into the Bazaar. So Aurex's past. Ogma is an organization within Avalon hierarchy founded to study the ecology of monsters. It attracts the wisest and brightest of Avalon sorcerers. Information about monsters is gathered by sorcerers from all over the world and compiled by the Ogma scholars. They analyze which monster parts can be destroyed and deduce elemental weaknesses. The information is then provided to the sorcerers in the field who use it to help them carry out slaughter pacts. Ogma also issues slaughter pacts and is, some say, the brains of the Avalon organization. There was once a very wise sorcerer. He was a founding member of Ogma and a monster scholar of great knowledge and perspicacity. I don't know that word. However, he became so immersed in his studies that his character changed. Colleagues watched as his behavior became increasingly erratic. He had a son who ended up witnessing his father's descent. His father began to angrily abuse his mother, sometimes even striking her, all the while letting out strange shrieks. The son could not bear to watch this anymore, so he decided he must leave his family and set out on his own. The son passed the trials to join Avalon and immediately began to distinguish himself. He had inherited his father's intelligence and sharp eye, and the battle victories mounted quickly. Aurex was his name, and everyone agreed that he had a bright future ahead of him. 3 years passed after he had his official duties. Young Aurex was invited to join Ogma, of which his father was nominally still a member. It was an accomplishment unprecedented for one his age. For the first time in a long time, Aurex returned home to announce his news. There he found his father a shadow of his former self and his mother missing. Strangely, he was not surprised, for he had already deduced that such circumstances were the only logical outcome of his father's behavior. Indeed, he was pleasantly surprised that his father had not turned into a monster. He felt a certain pity towards his mother, but he was not inclined to search for her. It was her own fault that she could not see her husband for what he truly was, so thought the son. Aurex began working for Ogma. He studied from dawn to dusk, immersing himself in monster lore. One day, he was interrupted by the visit of a strange man. He had a golden right arm, and he valued the information that Aurex provided a great deal. He had come with an extraordinary proposal. This power, he said, could make you rich. For Aurex, it was likely discovering a whole new breed of monster, but despite the man's insistence, Aurex refused his lucrative offer. Meanwhile, a rival to Aurex had appeared in the Ogma organization. Perold was his name, a capable man but a pessimist by nature. No matter how much the scholars learn, the world is always full of monsters, he said. The manner in which Perold spoke made it sound as if he had a bird-eye view of the entire world. Aurex disagreed. He had the optimism and idealism of youth on his side. He believed that with enough study, monsters could be eradicated, perhaps for good. Determined to prove Perold wrong, Aurex buried himself deeper into his work. But the more he learned, the more his initial confidence wavered. Instead of growing fewer, the monsters increased more than ever. Meanwhile, people in Ogma were beginning to talk. Aurex' behavior was becoming erratic, they whispered, talking to himself, clutching his head, kneeling like a stricken dog. Some of the older scholars couldn't help remarking how much it reminded them of what happened to his father. Could Aurex have inherited more than his father's intellect? Perhaps he, too, had to pay the same price for his genius. It came to a head when the Ogma scholars quizzed Aurex about Perold. But who is he, they asked. No one else had seen nor heard of the man. He was a vision, conjured in Aurex's own mind. The truth is, Aurex had suspected as much for some time now. He knew that sometimes he heard voices that no one else could. It began when he was a child, at the same time his father's strange behavior began. He could not bear to see his father fall apart before him. The young child longed to do something, but what? He thought and thought and thought until at least he heard the voice of a stranger. Logically, there is no way, it said. Since then, whenever Aurex thought about his dreams and hopes, he would hear that voice. There's no way, over and over again. He knew Perard did not exist, but he could not help but hear him. Logically, there is no way to eradicate the monsters. In a desperate bid to silence the voice, Aurex cut off his own ears. He tried to flee into a world of silence, but Perard followed him even there. There is no way, there's no way, there's no way, there is no way. In the end, Aurex turned into a monster. His Ogma colleagues issued a pact of slaughter against him. Soon enough, a sorcerer appeared before the rampaging monster, but instead of sacrificing Aurex, the man saved him instead. And he even gave Aurex one of his own ears. It was the same man who had visited Aurex long ago with his money-making offer. Carnatux was his name, and although he had been rebuffed, he had continued to follow Aurex's career. Once Carnatux heard that the rest of Aurex's story, he began to lecture him. It was as if he lent his ear only to make Aurex listen to him. "You've got the mind of a genius, but you're also the biggest fool I've ever known." Aurex sighed. On the face of it, the gold-loving man's speech was meaningless, but he recognized that he held a kernel of truth. Smart, but a fool. People pray for all kinds of things in their lives, but smart men know not to pursue those prayers. Prayers are like dreams, stories that cannot come true. Aurex was a genius without pure. His downfall was that he still yearned and dreamed like a common man. His mind tried to tell him, there's no way, it said, but his heart would not be swayed. He could not stop his father's decline, yet he yearned for him to be as he once was. He knew better than anyone that monsters cannot be eradicated, yet he still dreamed of a world without them. Despite his great intellect, he was a fool who could not let go of impossible dreams. How Aurex lamented, cursing himself and his shortcomings. How could he have been so ignorant of the human heart, of the depth of his own needs, nay, delusions? On that measure, the avaricious man before him was 10 times the sage that he was, for he understood the desires that grip men's hearts. He had answers that Aurex would have never found in a century of study. When everyone grows rich, there will be no more monsters. Aurex realized there was some truth in the claim. He knew that far more monsters appeared in impoverished areas. Could there be a connection? He would never have achieved this insight himself. How could he? He did not understand the needs that drove men to despair. This Carnatux had little education, little training, but of the realities of the world he knew much more than Aurex. And with that, Aurex decided to faithfully follow Carnatux. He began to put his talents to use and help Carnatux grow rich. After a while, he noticed something. He was no longer hearing voices in his head. He believed it was because of the ear that Carnatux had given him. Strangely enough for a man sworn to reason, he did not seek to test or prove this idea. That was when it dawned on him. Sometimes it's better to ignore what your mind tells you and just follow your heart. Ain't that the truth? Alright, let's go on and continue in the Bazaar. We've got one more fun NPC to learn about. We've got 8 chapters. Start with Debt Pacts, Chapter 11.
There's another member of the family I want you to help. Take care of him for a while, will you? He's more trouble than he's worth.
You're just making fun of me, aren't you? I can't go out and fight, you know. It's all because I can't use sorcery. Aha! I know that look. I saw it. You were looking down your nose at me. Ah, it's enough to make me depressed. If you can spare the time, can I talk to you for a bit after the job's done? Please?
The youth I met was the youngest of Carnatux's brothers. Cassus was his name. He is a dreary sort. The more he spoke, the more dispirited I grew. He said he could not use sorcery. Perhaps he is not a druid, but one of the Romulus.
Ah, you're back. So, about the thing I wanted to talk to you about. Will you let me take half the credit for this? I don't expect you to do it for free. Fighting aside, I'll do everything I can to help you. I want to show everyone what I can do. I have to do this.
going on between you and Cassus? He's been asking for you by name.
This is between you and me. But I've never heard Carnatux call me brother. He probably doesn't even think of me as a brother. I want to show him results he can see so that he'll recognize me for what I'm worth. You'll help me, right? We'll split it 50-50, okay?
A deep sigh, as if resigned to the end of the world. I couldn't turn down his request. Cassus seemed ashamed that he could not use sorcery. Is that why Carnatux doesn't see him as a brother?
Oh, you're back! You'll split the takings with me, right? Just remember, keep this a secret from Carnatux. With you on my side, maybe he'll finally see what I'm good for. I'll be counting on you.
Okay, on to 13 we go. We only have a few left.
Hey, I saw Cassus was getting you to do some odd jobs. Don't you worry. I gave him what for. He'll know to keep his mouth shut now. Right. Now then, you will be with me today.
On my journey, a question from Carnatux. What did Cassus want? He asked. It seems Cassus has not revealed his disquiet. He suffers in silence as his brother refuses to give him due respect.
What? You're worried about Cassus? He said I never called him brother, did he? Well, you can tell him this from me. He is not my brother. He is just a brat.
Dang, man, that's some tough love. It's like big brother love.
Are you heading out for work? Then before you go, you can tell him. Tell him what I told you just now.
What? What did he say? A lowly brat? Oh, Carnatux. I need to be alone for a while. I'm sorry.
He's just a brat. Does Carnatux really think that? It was not despair that I saw in Cassus's eyes. He has realized something. The gears of his mind are turning.
Ah, you're back. I kept turning what Carnatux said over and over again in my mind. He really doesn't think of me as a brother at all. You know what? I reckon he thinks of me as a kid he has to take care of. What I mean is, rather than looking at me as a brother, he sees me as a son. Would you think of me as family?
Let's go down to about the Bazaar, and we've got 2 more stories. So Cassus past. Cassus was raised by his Romulus father. His mother was also a Romulus, but she died while he was but a child. A monster attacked the family and took her away from him. After that, the young Cassus could not help but resent his father. He saw him as a coward who failed to protect his mother. It was a resentment that only grew stronger as he got older. For some reason, after his mother's death, monsters ceased attacking the village. He assumed that the village simply got lucky. If the monsters ever came again, he knew the people of the village would be in trouble. Especially his father. He was the leader of the village, a symbol of the complacency that the village had fallen into after years of peace. Had his father forgotten, or did he never realize in the first place? His wife died because he was too feeble to save her. Sometimes, travelers clad in black would visit the village. Cassus's father would always humble himself before these men. He would put on a lavish feast, anxiously attending to their every whim. It was as if he was terrified of them. That same cowardice that had killed his mother, Cassus could barely suppress his anger. The men in black were called sorcerers by the villagers. The more he saw of them and learned of them, the more interested he became. These were courageous men, men with the power to face monsters. If Cassus knew one thing, it was that he did not want to grow up to be a coward like his father. Dreams of powerful heroes filled his mind until one day he blurted out the truth. "I want to be a sorcerer," he said. The villagers were aghast and remonstrated with the boy. People who can use magic are born, not made. You do not have the blood of the sorcerers in you, they said. Cassus refused to listen to them. They were probably lying anyways in an effort to dissuade him from his dream. The boy grew to be a young man, and his dream grew with him. The day came to pass that the young Cassus decided it was time to leave the village. He was not afraid to tell everyone who asked that he was going to become a sorcerer's apprentice. Of course, his father opposed him, but he could not dissuade his son. Cassus simply brushed off all the entreaties. What were they to him, the words of a pitiful, timid old man? Had his father even showed a sliver of courage, Cassus's mother might still be alive. Do any sorcerers live here? After leaving the village, young Cassus traveled far and wide, asking everyone he met the same question. But always he received only guarded silence for an answer. It seemed that in the outside world, sorcerers were not held in good repute. Indeed, it was a rare thing for a sorcerer to even appear on the streets of Romulus towns. So different from his own village. There, sorcerers were common visitors and made to feel welcome. He supposed that his village must have been a special case, ignorant of the opinion of the world around it. Several months passed, and Cassus still had not found a single sorcerer. His meager purse was nearly empty, and he was growing hungry. But then, finally, he found some information, the kind he had been looking for. Go to the inn on the outskirts of town, he was told, and talk to a certain man there. When Cassus arrived, he found a man with a golden right arm. He did not look like much of a sorcerer, but Cassus could not afford to be particular. Sure, you can be my apprentice, the man replied, if you pay me. So surprised was he by the answer, Cassus had to ask again and again, but each time the man repeated his condition, if you pay me. Something was wrong. Perhaps this so-called sorcerer was a fake. Cassus wanted nothing more to do with him. As he left the inn, Cassus was approached by another man. The man said that he had overheard the exchange that had just taken place, and that he could take Cassus to another sorcerer, a friend of his. What fortune takes with one hand, she gives with the other. Elated to receive the second chance, Cassus agreed to accompany the man. He was led to a deserted spot where a woman in a black garb awaited. The lady sorcerer spoke. If you wish to be a sorcerer, you must pass my trial, she said. It is a necessary evil, she explained. Cassus had to break into the house of a wicked man and steal his money. Do not think of it as robbery. It is a necessary act for the greater good, she said. Cassus looked uncertain. I'll go with you. Every trial is undertaken by two people. It seemed dangerous and reckless, but Cassus did not know when he might meet another sorcerer. It was now or never. It all went horribly wrong. When they broke into the mansion, they were spotted by the owner's guards. Quick as lightning, the lady sorcerer made good her escape. She moved so fast, Cassus thought that she must have cast a spell. He had no such magic to help him, and he was arrested on the spot. After that, the torture began. Where is your accomplice? Where can I find her? Demanded the lord of the mansion. Cassus, believing that this was part of the trial, refused to talk, despite the things done to him. The men could not understand Cassus's resistance. Why are you trying to protect her? He asked. Everyone in this town knows her for a common thief. He had been duped. He tried to tell the man that it was all a mistake, that he was innocent of any wrongdoing. The woman's not my friend. I am not her accomplice. No matter how many times he repeated the story, the man refused to believe him. Helplessly, Cassus wept, and when he realized how pitiful he must look, he wept even more. Looking down at him, the man laughed. His scorn only increased Cassus's misery. I wanted to be strong, he whispered. The man heard and laughed again, his belly shaking in mirth. Finally recovering his breath, he sneered at Cassus. Strong? A sniveling worm like you? Never. Through his tears, Cassus repeated the same words over and over again. I want to be strong, 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 I want to be strong. Strong enough to save his mother. Finally, Cassus turned into a monster. The lord of the mansion screamed and then collapsed to the ground unconscious. Cassus did not remain a monster for long. A savior appeared and rescued him from his fate. It was the golden sorcerer, the man from the inn. Did you come here to save me? When he came to his senses again, Cassus stammered out his thanks through tears of gratitude. Fool, of course I didn't. The man's name was Carnatux. He explained that he had come to take advantage of the situation and pilfer some of the mansion's treasure. When I got here, I found you running amok. The mansion's owner was a vicious man who had amassed a fortune through unscrupulous money lending. Cassus began to lay out his heart, everything that had been bottled up inside him. It came out in a torrent, and he wanted to be a real man, not a pitiful wretch like his father. Put a muzzle on it. I cannot stand the mewling of children. Not an ounce of sympathy. Cassus realized he didn't matter at all to the mess man. What do I care of your father? I'm a very busy man. With that, Carnatux turned and left. That was when the lord of the mansion began to stir from his swoon. Cassus knew no good would come from being seen here with the man fully awoke, and so, having nowhere else to go, Cassus went after Carnatux. Carnatux's destination was a derelict house, inhabited by outcasts from society. These were people who, for reasons beyond their control, had failed to join normal society. Be it by birth, or appearance, or illness, they did not belong. Amongst them were children, many younger than Cassus. Carnatux began to hand out the plunder he had stolen. "This gold means more to these people than that money lender, and you too for that matter." When Cassus first met him, Carnatux had demanded payment. From Carnatux's point of view, Cassus was a young man blessed by fortune. It was slowly dawning on Cassus just how ignorant he was of the world. "Your father deserves your gratitude, not your scorn. You've only seen him as a coward who couldn't protect your mother, but it's time you thought again," said Carnatux. "You're a young idiot who doesn't know the first thing about this world." Then Carnatux shared what he had surmised from Cassus' account. "Do you think your father bowed his head down to the sorcerers because he was afraid? The feast, the sycophancy, it had a purpose," explained Carnatux. "It was all to protect the village. The sorcerers came so often to the village because they felt welcome there. The villagers must have been approached by the sorcerers first and petitioned them to keep their land safe, and some of the sorcerers must have agreed to help. Maybe the villagers did it because your mother was killed." Cassus gasped. It made sense. Could that be the truth? His father, stricken with remorse for not being able to protect his mother, had tried to make the village safer the only way he knew how? Your father was protecting the world in the only way he could. If Carnatux spoke the truth, then Cassus had done his father a terrible wrong. By bowing down his head to the sorcerers, his father had been keeping Cassus safe. It was then that he knew that Carnatux had spoken the truth when he called him a young idiot who doesn't know the first thing about this world. Cassus wondered who this golden man was who had opened his eyes to the truth. Though utterly different in character and countenance, Carnatux somehow reminded the young man of his father. Perhaps it was because he echoed his father's thoughts, or because he had lived much of his life like his father. After all, he was protecting what mattered to him despite being misunderstood. By stealing from the rich and giving to the poor, he was, in his own way, defending the defenseless. If you want to protect something, you need more than just strength. He did not have to be a sorcerer to live a life of courage and valor. Cassus kneeled down before Carnatux and made a new request. "I don't need to become a sorcerer," he said, "but please make me your apprentice." He could not return to his village, not yet. Instead, he would serve at Carnatux's side, do any chore required of him, for as long as it took him to learn, like his father and Carnatux, how he could help people in his own way. A wide grin crossed Carnatux's face. Then he replied, "You'd best be prepared, son. I worked my servants hard." That's nice. So he's giving him tough love. He wants him to be ready for the world. So like you can't really blame him. So let's go ahead and finish up this story.
Keeping your nose to the grindstone, are you? Come on! This shop's not going to grow by itself. I want this to be the flagship of my business empire. Right, I know what to do. I'll personally take you somewhere where you can make me some money. Come on, then!
Carnatux wants to expand his shop. I sense something like passion, tenacity. But as we approach our destination, Carnatux falls into a troubled silence. Could this place be more dangerous than feared?
Oh, sorry about that. I don't know what came over me. I have to build up the business. I want the name Carnatux to be known far and wide. Right, we're going back to the same place tomorrow. Got it?
Tomorrow? I think he means right now.
Oh, I didn't see you there. I had my head in the clouds again. What's that look for? Got a problem, have you? Stop gawping. I charge a high fee for admiring me. Right, get your boots on. We're off. Same place as yesterday.
Something is clearly wrong with Carnatux. I've never heard that vulgar, mocking laugh. Even now and then, Carnatux appears to suddenly remember himself. "I'm going to expand the shop," he announces.
Wait! I think you'd better leave him alone. He tends to get like that around this time of year. That place he took you, that's got nothing to do with the business. I heard about it before. Someone he used to know lived near there.
Cassus has been shooting his mouth off again, has he? Yes. I once knew someone who lived there. Died just around this time of year. Oh, shut up! I know it's not like me moping around like a big girl's blouse. Anyway, you can calm your worried little head. This'll be the last trip for a while.
Carnatux is in debt to that person. He is alive today only because of her. He confides that he opened the shop because of what the person desired. Who could it be, this maker of Carnatux's life?
I'm not wallowing, you know. I'm just remembering. I just want to show my gratitude somehow, and if just remembering is all I can do, then so be it. This is for the one person I owe a debt to. Ah, I've said too much. You can pay me for this later. Think you can have my past for free, do you? We'll see about that.
Lore, and we get Carnatux's past. Carnatux's father was the most heinous criminal in the history of Avalon. He broke the laws of Avalon in order to save monsters. Even worse, he secretly took the former monsters and sold them as slaves. They say he did this hundreds of times. No other sorcerer has saved so many in the history of Avalon. Amongst the former monsters was a woman who bore him a child. The child's name was Carnatux. While still an infant, Carnatux was brought up by his father's former monsters. Although he remembers little of this time, the end of it is burned in his memory. It came to pass that Avalon learned of his father's wicked ways. While the young Carnatux was out playing, his home was attacked. Everyone was taken away. To where, Carnatux did not know. All he knew was that his father had been purged. As a child of a monster, Carnatux was not treated kindly. With no home of his own, he hid himself in the slums of the Romulus, away from the censorious glare of Avalon. Calling himself Gareth, in that impoverished place he found acceptance, even though he was one of the mistrusted druids. Gareth was accepted into the local gang, where he joined fights against gangs from nearby towns. He had little choice. Like it or not, crime and plunder was his only means of survival. Ironically, the simple sorcery that his father had taught him made him a powerful figure in this world. Carnatux rose to be the boss of the rogues and a well-known figure in the slum town. Too well-known, perhaps. Rich or poor, a man's basic character does not change. There are always ways to begrudge success in others. He became the nail that stuck out, and his former friends decided to hammer him down. Carnatux awoke in a strange bed. A Romulus woman had found him dying in the street and rescued him. She nursed him back to health, expecting and asking for nothing in return. The woman ran a shop with her husband. It was a popular store that sold rare goods imported from the east. Hers was a comfortable life, and yet she was a frequent visitor to the slum town. She came to give alms to the poor and needy. The woman showed Carnatux a scrap of paper covered in an untidy scrawl. It was written by a young orphan describing her dreams for the future. She wanted to become rich, to live in a grand house. It was the woman's own dream, and this scrap of writing was her inspiration, the reason she built the shop. She wanted to provide a refuge where the other orphans could live in freedom. To do that, she had to make herself wealthy. She chuckled as she said this, but there was a fire in her eyes. The young Carnatux was struck speechless, as if by a bolt. What this woman did, he had heard of such a thing, but he had assumed that it would never encounter it. It might exist as he thought, but he never thought in his own world. Unconditional love. In this world of greed and avarice, there existed pure hearts that gave without demanding anything in return. He knew the woman was married, but from that moment Carnatux fell in love. Then one day, after his wounds were healed, robbers broke into the shop that the woman and her husband ran. The culprits were his old accomplices, the rogues of the Gareth gang. It made Carnatux reflect on his past. Not so very long ago, he would have been alongside them, doing the same thing, but not anymore. He was in debt to the woman, and resolved to fight his old allies. In a way, he was facing off against his former self. Half a year passed. Using the sorcery that he knew, Carnatux succeeded in driving all the rogues from the slum town, but he drew little satisfaction from the deed. The people he fought against were once his friends. They did not enjoy stealing any more than he had. They did it because they had no other way to survive. There was a reason they chose that woman's store to rob. They knew all about her almsgiving, her sympathy for the poor, but for them, hers was a hypocrisy worse than the honest greed, and she deserved to be punished. Their reasoning was only an excuse, a pretext, but one that Carnatux could understand. Once upon a time, Carnatux was also consumed by jealousy. What could a man do faced with a world of irrational and unjust as this one? People are discriminated against because of where they're born. They sink into debt because of their families. Children are condemned by the crimes of their fathers. We are powerless in the face of such a capricious fate. Why is one man so ill-starred and another one blessed? Even if it is no more than pure happenstance, must we accept the outcome without complaint? Are those who own nothing not even entitled to jealousy? Jealousy towards the happy, the fortunate, the rich? To deny them even that would be akin to saying they were not allowed to be human. Though the woman tried to help these unfortunates, her sympathy and care brought only resentment in return. This only made Carnatux admire her all the more, for even if it was hypocrisy, was it still not a worthy deed? If Carnatux had remained in the woman's fold for just a bit longer, perhaps he would not have later been branded as unscrumptious. But such musings are much like pondering water under the bridge. So it was Carnatux set off to return the stolen goods he had recovered from his former comrades. But much time had passed, and when he found the woman, he could not hide his shock at the terrible change she had undergone. He hardly recognized her. Her clothes were tattered and her gaze was hollow. It was as if the life had fled from her. The shop she and her husband ran was no more. It had been driven into ruin by unjust taxes imposed by a nobleman. The woman beseeched Carnatux for money. "Please," she said, "after all I've done for you, you owe it to me." Carnatux recoiled from her. He could not bear to see her like this. He gave her the goods that he had recovered from the robbers and left. For the first time in his life, he wept. He later learned that she turned into a monster and was punished by a sorcerer. Losing her money had changed the woman. Like a disease, poverty had the power to transform a person's character, change everything that they were. But before she was afflicted with the disease, she had been a woman worthy of respect. That was always true no matter what followed. Her unconditional love had saved Carnatux's life. What she had become after she lost her money, that was not her true self. Or so Carnatux truly wanted to believe. For if the kindness that had saved him was a mere fleeting affectation, then salvation meant nothing in this world. Either way, Carnatux had learned to despise poverty. Poverty had taken the woman he knew from him. If the whole world was rich, no more monsters would be born. To this day, Carnatux thinks often of the woman. It could not have been a coincidence then that he would first decide to open his shop. He announced that he would gild every inch of the shop. They were words that were once written by an orphan on a scrap of paper. His would be a shining, gaudy shop, just as the young girl dreamed. He would make the child's dream real again. It's a sad story, but he is a man of honor. And let's go ahead and do our final debt pact with him.
What are you doing here? You're sacked! Get out! Do you know why? Here's why. You are useless! Yes, you are! So, how does it feel? Getting the sack? This'll be your last job, and don't you think for a minute that means you can slack off, you useless twerp!
It seemed that it was no joke. I'm bewildered, confused, fired, but why so suddenly? I shouldn't really care now, should I? But I can't deny it. I was flummoxed by this turn of events. Flummoxed, I don't even know that word. I would guess that means confused.
What is it now? Grumpy about getting fired? Now look, use your head, will you? I'm saying you're free to go. I'm clearing your debt. You've done a lot for the family, you know, and I'd rather show my gratitude sooner rather than later. I already know what it's like to have waited until it was too late. Let this be a lesson to you. Stop getting yourself into debt. What? There was no debt in the first place. Ah, details, details.
And that is the story of the Bazaar Ledger and Carnatux and his wonderful family. Let me know down in the comments what you guys thought. I really enjoyed these stories and these characters, and they really grew on me. And I just love the anti-heroes, so to say. They come off as really sleazy, but they're all very good people. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this longer video, and until next time, happy hunting.